Okay, Alana Baratto, you were on the Driven to Ride podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. You've made quite a career in the motorcycling world, and it seems like you've been around motorcycles kind of most, if not all, your life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I want to ask you, what do maybe most people know you for? What is your kind of claim to fame?
Oh, fame's a strong word. I don't know if fame is the way, don't know if fame would be the way to describe it, but I guess that if you asked what am I probably most known for would be my passion, my passion for the sport and for the industry to essentially contribute to the growth and the development of the industry and the sport so that more people get to enjoy it like I do. So I think that that's probably what most people would say if you had to ask them.
Okay, I like it. And so also, you're in the motorcycle industry as your
Yeah.
day job, which is amazing that you can, do something for your day job that, is fueled by passion. What is your day job?
My day job is the head of marketing for Ducati Australia and New Zealand. So this
Okay,
is a
awesome.
job that I've had for now almost 5 years.
Wow. Well, congratulations on 5 years,
Thank you. Nearly 5 years.
nearly 5 years. But let's bring it back to the beginning, and we'll
Yeah.
come back to that. How did you even get into motorcycling in the first place?
My father was gifted with two daughters, no
Okay.
sons. And so he was intent that these two daughters were, I guess, going to share his hobbies. And so from a very young age, I think around 4, he started with the motorcycle topic with me. And with my sister as well, but I probably had more traction with me. So I had my first motorcycle when I was 4. He had me at my first motorcycle Grand Prix when I was 5. And so I was always around it. He rode off-road, he rode on-road. So it was essentially something that had been there my entire life. And something that I, obviously grew to love and then decided to make into a career. So essentially, I have him to thank for it. And then it all just kind of grew from there. His passion for motorcycles, cars, and music is something that I took, and my sister took his passion for fishing and cooking. So we shared the love.
Yeah, I was going to say, sounds like it's a mission accomplished for him. He was able to impart all of those hobbies and passions to you guys. So that's
He
super
did.
cool.
He passed them on. Quite expensive.
Yeah.
Quite expensive hobbies that he did pass on.
Yeah, I think fishing is one of those things where people don't realize how expensive it is, but you get the rod, the reel, and if you do like fly fishing or even just regular fishing, you can spend a lot of money. You can spend motorcycle money on fishing
You
stuff.
really could, but I don't have those kind of patience. So that's something that never ever took with me.
I feel you. It's kind of funny. You're almost like mirroring my childhood because my dad was kind of into fishing, tried to get me into that. Didn't have any patience for it. Once you got a motor around and was able to just
Exactly.
twist the throttle or put the pedal down, and you get that immediate satisfaction, that was much more my speed. So I think we're kindred
Absolutely.
spirits on that one.
Absolutely.
What was the first bike you had at 4?
A Peewee 50, a pink Peewee 50. And can you believe it? I hopped on it and rode straight through a barbed wire fence. Correct.
Wow, not even a regular fence, a barbed wire
A
fence.
barbed wire fence. He surprised me with a Peewee. He had bought a new dirt bike, and so he bought me a pink Peewee 50. And of course, I'd been watching Mick Doohan and people like that on television. So, I knew exactly what I was doing at 4 years old and twisted the throttle and went straight into the fence. Didn't even attempt to take the corner. But that was okay. Shook myself off, got back on, and have been riding, since then, I guess.
Yeah, so despite that initial hiccup, were you kind of hooked on motorcycling from the start once you threw a leg over that little Peewee 50?
Yeah, look, I think that my enjoyment of riding is definitely, something that fuels me, but my deepest love and passion is for the sport. So particularly with road racing. So for me, the first time I saw a road race live, which probably would have been motorcycle Grand Prix at Eastern Creek back in those days. That's, I think, when I was really hooked.
Nice. Yeah, and just for full disclosure, you and I met at the MotoGP race in Mugello, which was pretty cool because us English speakers were kind of few and far between. So it's like you kind of picked up, like, we were in the break room and I kind of picked up somebody speaking English, and I was like, that's what kind of attracted me over to you and your family.
Yeah.
Just, oh, you guys speak English too? Thank God. Like, I needed to hear some kind of English. So, what is the culture of like motorcycle racing and MotoGP following like in Australia and New Zealand? Is it as big as it is in Europe?
Look, to be honest, I think that the motorcycle culture in Australia is more aligned to the US. So it
Oh, okay.
has, for sure, it has traction, but isn't as popular as some of the other sports that we have in Australia, like AFL or NRL, tennis, those kind of topics. It doesn't have, as huge a focus as what I guess motorcycling has in Europe. When you go to Spain or when you travel to Italy and you see the front pages of their newspapers, that's not something that generally happens in Australia. So a little bit less popular for sure. And obviously, the size of our population is different. But, we're very proud because we've produced some huge motorcycling talents, both in road and off-road, throughout the history.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Mick Doohan, another racer. I believe he's Australian, and he's in the King of the Baggers series right now with Moto America. Is Troy Herfoss, if you've heard of him?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's kind of the odd man out riding these American baggers all around the U.S., which I don't know if you've seen King of the Baggers, but it's pretty nuts.
It's pretty wild. It's a very interesting.
Yeah.
I've never seen it live. I've seen it on TV and obviously across social media, but I haven't seen it. I haven't been there physically, but it's pretty crazy, right? Whose idea was that?
And now that I'm thinking about it, it's about as something as crazy that only either the Americans or the Australians would do. Nobody else in the world would do it.
100%. It's not something that we've done here in Australia yet. So let's see.
Yeah, maybe one day. So, well, talking about like just the culture of motorcycling in general, just in Australia versus maybe the U.S. or Europe. I believe you've spent time in all three kind of areas. What are kind of some of the similarities and differences, or maybe what makes the motorcycle scene in Australia unique?
Look, like I said, I think that it has, from an off-road perspective and from a road perspective, I think it shares, more of an American culture, just because, the spaces are quite large and wide. The ability to transit are quite large and wide, and we use our motorcycles in Australia and I guess in America more as a leisure activity. We don't have so many commuting topics. For sure there is commuting topics, but in Europe, you see a lot more bikes used as day-to-day transport. For ours, it's much more of a leisure activity. So I think that is probably one of the things that makes Australia unique. The other one is essentially, again, probably like the US, differs to Europe, where you can get your motorcycle license a lot younger, or you're exposed to be able to ride on the road a lot younger. So naturally, the audience, I guess, for motorcycle riding here is a little bit older when they get into it, and then obviously that's a direct result all the way through. So it's probably a little bit older, an older audience that we're working with, which I believe is much the same as the US.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I think the average riding age is older than it used to be. But that's, I think, too, a lot of cruisers, a lot of folks who have ridden, cruisers and Harleys for a really long time.
Yeah.
But hopefully, that skews younger as the years go on. But
yeah, 100%. I think that, for sure, Australia has some, beautiful country that we can ride in, particularly from an off-road and from a touring perspective. So I think that, that's something definitely unique that we have to offer. But I think that, as I guess electric comes in and, as we're seeing, with electric bicycles and things like that, you are seeing when those two, I guess, meet. Hopefully we do see a lot more of a younger audience starting to come through from a younger age that have, access to ride motorcycles in areas which are, a little bit more complicated now with, noise issues and things like that.
Right. Yeah, good point. So fingers crossed for that one. Do you do a lot of on and off road riding, or do you kind of prefer one or the other?
Look, I do more road riding.
Sure.
I'm not known for my talents or abilities off-road. If you've seen me off-road, you'd understand why. I do enjoy watching off-road. I think particularly desert racing here in Australia is quite big. And
Sure.
for sure, we have a lot of growth. We have a huge also participation in motocross. But me as a participant, absolutely not. I do prefer road racing from a spectator perspective, but from a riding perspective, more road orientated for sure.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I learned how to ride motorcycles using dirt bikes,
Yeah.
but then as I got older, I don't know if I just like my coordination is not as good, or maybe I'm just more aware of like, oh, I could really get hurt like pretty easily if I do it, even if it is dirt. And I'm in my own head about it. So I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, I enjoy grass track. My parents have a property, so I still, get to enjoy, riding on the property. But,
Okay.
specifically enduro, specifically motocross, no.
Well, that's the cool thing about the motorcycle world is that there is something for everybody. So
Absolutely, and like I said, there's definitely I enjoy spectating with those disciplines as well. But yeah, as a rider, I have very short legs and no coordination.
fair enough. Well, let's talk about your journey into the motorcycling industry. How did you turn that passion into a career?
It was I guess as much as I always loved motorcycling and, going to road racing and watching road racing, it was a passion that really drove me. It probably wasn't until 98, 99 that, I started to, really develop the feeling that I wanted to pursue a career in motorcycling, particularly
Okay.
the sport.
Hmm.
It was essentially motorcycling or architecture. Could you get any more different? Could you get any more different disciplines?
Yeah, seriously.
So I finished school, and my parents essentially said to me that I had a year to make this, motorcycling topic work. Otherwise, it was, back to university I go and to do architecture. And I got a job essentially with a motorcycle dealership first up. So I started in the service department of a motorcycle dealership and working as their service advisor, actually, in a very rough part of Sydney, as like a 17, 18-year-old fresh out of school.
Yeah.
And essentially, I started working there and, really enjoyed it, really loved it. And then through people that I knew, in the road racing scene, there was an opportunity that came up at Aprilia. So
Hmm.
I think this is probably 2005 at this point. And I started essentially in their warranty and administration departments and developed, my real love of marketing. And so I went back to school and obviously got a degree in marketing and essentially grew from there. So I went into their marketing department. I was there for essentially, I think it was about 5 years. Actually then left for 5 years. I left the industry entirely and went into vitamins. Completely different.
Okay.
But I thought that I needed a different industry in order to learn different skills. And then after 5 years in vitamins, that passion doesn't go away, I discovered. And so I came back. And then from there, essentially, Aprilia, I did 4 years, I think it was, with the KDM group. So, more focused on off-road. And then 5 years ago, Ducati offered me a home. So, and in between there, obviously, like we spoke about, took on different roles within the sport from Motorcycling Australia perspective and FIM perspective. So it's just kind of evolved, I guess.
Yeah, you really started from the bottom and now you're here.
I really, yeah, and I think that having that understanding of the dealership floor is invaluable. So there's nothing about my career that I would change.
Yeah, that's got to be kind of a unique experience or set of experiences, like really working at a dealership and then working your way up and having kind of that full vertical perspective of how the motorcycle industry works. I can't imagine that's all too common.
No, look, I think that, in motorcycling, I guess in automotive it's probably not so common. In motorcycling, there's probably a few people
Mhm.
that have it. But yeah, I think that it gives you a different perception and a different understanding of what it's like all the way through from the dealership, from the sport into the industry, the media. Yeah, it's definitely all encompassing. So there's no point of my experiences, even the part of the vitamins that I regret. I think that they've all led me to where I am with a much better understanding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was there anything that surprised you maybe over the course of your career going from like a spectator and an enthusiast to an industry professional or?
Yeah, look, I think that probably the one that surprises me the most is that you have to work at your passion. It's
Mhm.
passion. It's definitely easier to get out of bed every morning and do what you love. But everything has its days, right? So it's something that when you wake up in the morning and the first thing you think about is a motorcycle, and the last thing you think about is a motorcycle, it quickly impacts that passion. So I think that that's probably the takeaway, and the thing that surprised me the most is that despite the passion being so strong, and the understanding of it being so well understood, that for sure you have to work on the passion. You have to ride the bike and remember that enjoy that you have for it, and you have to go to a track and sit there as a spectator and watch it, and feel that adrenaline that keeps that passion ignited.
Yeah, I think that's some really wise words. It probably keeps you grounded and probably reminds you why you do what you do.
100%. And I've seen lots of people come into this industry that have been motivated, obviously by passion, but within a few years they've exited,
Mhm.
because they're less likely to go to events, or they kind of need a different space. So yeah, I think that that's probably the biggest surprise, was that you really do have to make a concerted effort to still get out there and enjoy it in order to keep the passion burning.
Yeah, wise words. And you mentioned kind of growing your career just beyond Ducati
Mm.
and being involved in some organizations. I don't think anybody can accuse you of not putting the effort in and not being involved because you're also involved with Motorcycling Australia and the FIM Women in Motorcycling Commission.
Yes.
Um, can you tell me about both of those organizations and what you do with them?
Yeah, so Motorcycling Australia is essentially the federation here in Australia that looks after the sport, so across all the disciplines. Motorcycling Australia is also in the position where they are also the promoter of Australian Superbike Championship and also Pro MX. But essentially, it is the organisation that's responsible for participation of motorcycling sport in general. So I sit and have sat on the board of directors for Motorcycling Australia for now over 5 years.
Cool.
And then I also support them with their women's activities here in Australia. So I sit as the chair of their women's committee. And then through that, I also work with FIM Oceania, which is essentially the connu that looks after Australia and New Zealand from an FIM perspective. And then I also work with FIM Global, with their female participation in their women's committees as well. So I get to work across the sport. I get to see it from a grassroots level all the way up to a national and international level. And we work on different initiatives in order to build participation, particularly for me around women.
Sure. Yeah. Can you tell me about what some projects that you've been working on or some accomplishments that you've been able to achieve with some of these groups?
Yeah, look, I think that actually most recently, probably going back about 3 years now, from a motocross perspective and from an enduro perspective, we were not seeing the participation of women at the national championship level. They were
Hmm.
essentially, participating in local and state championships, but they weren't taking that big leap into that national stage. So, with some initiatives that we built around community, around changing a little bit of the rules and the guidelines in order to bring more women in, we've essentially seen growth of both of those categories on a national stage. So most recently, I was at a motocross, the last round of the Australian Motocross Championship, and there was
Hmm.
28 women on the gates. So that was incredible. And enduro very much the same. So there
Hmm.
was, going back about 3 years, in the EW classes, there was cases where we were having 2 or 3 women competing. Now with the introduction of the development class with EWD, we're now seeing on average 20 women competing at each round. So
Wow.
they are essentially initiatives that we've developed here, either through mentoring, community-based events, social media awareness, education, those aspects that we've encouraged women to make that step, and now we're seeing a lot more women competing at the national level.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty fulfilling. Seeing that growth as kind of fruits of your labor of outreach and mentorship and classes and education.
Yeah, look, I won't lie. At the last round of motocross, when those gates were so full, and the level of skill and the racing was amazing. That yeah, it was pretty. It was a pretty proud moment.
I think you can toot your own horn on that one.
No, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a village for sure.
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of growth in female motorcycle just enthusiasts, people who ride either for commuting or on the weekends or for fun? I know in the U.S. it's growing. I think it's somewhere above 20% now. Are you seeing the similar growth in Australia?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, if you go back, 10, 15 years, for sure women's participation has grown. We're also seeing, the emergence of different groups and different coaching schools also where, women coaches are essentially, or women's coaching events are essentially selling out quite quickly. So, we
Mhm.
understand that, more women attract more women. And so that grows and grows and grows. But we're also seeing, through social media that now with the introduction of social media, as opposed to 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that, there are communities where women are coming together. So, just on the east coast of Australia, there's, one group on Facebook that essentially has over 8,000 women that
Wow.
support one another in order to go riding and build groups both on track, off track, road, leisure, commuting, but that support one another with workshop nights or education events, even test rides. They're actually doing some track days as well where they've introduced classes for women to show up on their road bikes, even Harleys to go out on the track and see if they like it. So, it's definitely something that is gaining momentum. Would I like to see more? Absolutely. But, very much, more women, supporting more women is definitely the ingredient to success.
Yeah, it's great to hear that it's a growing and a healthy community
Yeah.
that just keeps getting better and better as time goes on.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
how, kind of, in addition to that, kind of in broad strokes, how have you seen the motorcycle industry change over your career?
Look, probably I think from my perspective, working in marketing in the last 15, 20 years, the introduction of digital has entirely changed that landscape. The
Mm,
way that we engage with the industry, the way that we engage with the sport has completely changed within that time. The fact that, when I was a kid, I used to beg my mum to take me to the newsagents on a Tuesday to every second Tuesday to get Australian motorcycle news. And now it's something that, essentially every time I log onto my phone, there's a new piece of news that comes on. So that's completely
sure.
changed. And from a marketing perspective, that is, that area is quite dynamic and always changing. But I think as a general change, if we go back a fair while, motorcycling was more of, transport was seen more as a transport industry. And I think
Mm,
that, we've really moved into being an entertainment industry now. So, and there's no, different manufacturers have, obviously different events or different experiences that they now offer their clients. Essentially, the client experience within the store and also with the manufacturers are paramount. That relationship that we have. But I think that, this was all evident during COVID. So, when people weren't essentially, that entertainment dollar that everyone
mm,
fights for in the household when,
mm,
you didn't have travel as an example there,
yeah.
you saw a huge boom in motorcycle sales. And so I think that, really does prove that, motorcycling is something that is entertainment. And, that's our job. We drive emotions.
Yeah, I mean, I've ridden half my life and I've talked to, a fair amount of people, and everybody kind of agrees there's nothing like motorcycling. And thinking about it from an entertainment perspective, it does ring true. I mean, you're going out there and you're entertained by just the ride, and then you could be entertained by racing, by road racing, motocross, even just kind of going shopping into the dealer, like you mentioned. It's a very good point.
Yeah, and look, I think that our lives are more busy today than they've ever been, and so and there's more access to you know, different leisure activities, than ever before. For sure, that competition for that entertainment household dollar has become more intense, and so
Hmm.
motorcycling's there. Whether you're going racing, whether you're going to be a spectator, whether you're going on a tour, whether you're buying a new motorcycle or maintaining your motorcycle. I think that motorcycling as an industry has become a lot more of an entertainment topic than just a transport topic. So that I think would be probably one thing that's changed a lot in probably the last 10 years.
Sure. Yeah, and that makes me think of, like, YouTube and, like, social media, like you mentioned, the digital
100%.
content has just exploded. So, yeah, that's a really good point. I never thought about it that way. So thank you for the wise observation.
No problem.
Going into touring, you mentioned touring. Do you do a lot of motorcycle touring and traveling?
Not as much as I'd like to. I guess that
Sure.
can you imagine that one of the bucket list items that I've never done and have always wanted to do is to ride from Sydney to Phillip Island for MotoGP? It's like I've driven it, but
Right. Yeah.
I've never ridden it. So essentially that's one particular journey that sits there that never really gets ticked off because obviously MotoGP is one of the biggest events, working events of the year for me. So it
Sure.
never really able to manage it, but it sits there. But yeah, for sure, there's different. I'd also like to go to Vietnam and to do
Mm.
some of the motorcycle tours in Vietnam. But these are all topics that sit on a list that seems to expand, but never seems to be ticked off. But
Sure.
more of my motorcycling trips currently is around racing. So hence why you saw me at Magello.
Right. Yeah. So I have to ask, were you there working, or was it a leisure trip, or a little bit of
No.
both?
No, for Magello, it was absolutely holidays. So,
Okay. Cool.
I took 2 weeks on holidays, and I went and climbed a mountain that I'd always wanted to climb, and went to Magello because I've always wanted to see it. But I think, going back to our earlier topic, I try to make it a point every year that I take, some time off and actually go to a MotoGP somewhere else in the world, and
Hmm.
sit there as a spectator and actually enjoy it. So, no working, and just sit on the hill or in the grandstand and actually get to watch the racing with the spectators. So Magello was this year.
What did you think of Magello?
Incredible. Nothing
It's
I've ever
wild.
seen. Absolutely wild. Absolutely
Really?
wild. I think that for
Like even compared
sure. Sorry, you
Oh, go
finished?
ahead. I'm sorry. Nope. I just say even compared to like, I mean, if you've been to multiple MotoGP
Yeah,
races, I mean, that was one of the wilder ones.
100%. So I think that, um, in Australia, there's a lot, when you go to MotoGP, the action is on track, essentially.
Hmm.
But at Magello, it seemed to be, the on track action was essentially a support for all the off track action that seemed to be
You're
happening. So,
100% right. Yeah, 100% right.
so it was incredible, really incredible to see. Something that I'm very glad that I got to do.
Yeah, you didn't camp by chance
No, I
at
did
Magello, did
not.
you?
I did not, but I did get stuck in the 6 hours worth of traffic leaving the circuit. So I had a full Magello experience. I sat in the grandstand. And got to watch it with all the spectators as well. So I had the full experience.
Yeah, it's a magical place, even if it is loud and crazy and wild. It's I can't imagine there's many other places like it.
No, I don't think so. I think they call it non si dormi, which means, you don't sleep. And I was like, going into it, I was like, why do they say that? But 100% after the chainsaws and the bikes going up and down and the exhaust systems and all the other things that you came across, I completely understand now why they say that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what it says on the tin, 100%.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience.
Yeah.
So, going back to touring a little bit, I know that your bucket list keeps growing, but do you have a favorite maybe motorcycle trip that you have taken?
Um, Look, as far as, actually spending time on the bike and traveling on the bike, no, there's nothing that really stands out to me that's like my absolute favorite. I like doing, more, day rides,
Sure.
elements than a full journey. But like I
Hmm.
said, obviously I do try to dedicate some time every year to doing, a trip that's motorcycle orientated, more from a racing perspective. Probably the one that stands out to me, loved Magello, and it's definitely, one of the absolute, highlights of my life. But I have to say that the Circuit of the Americas, a trip that I did to the Circuit of the Americas just before COVID, would have to be
Okay.
one of my favorites. I loved Coda. Obviously, I have a um, affiliation with music as well, and so to be able to drive a pickup truck, to go to the racetrack all day, and watch motorcycle racing, and then go out at night and listen to music, to see all those things come together is pretty special. So I'd have to say
You had the
Coda.
you had the full American experience. I love
Full
it.
American experience. I did a road trip from Nashville, all the way down to New Orleans, and then back
Yeah.
through San Antonio up into Austin, and then finally flew out of Dallas. So it was a full American experience.
Yeah, you picked some good cities to choose, especially
Yeah.
if you were looking for music. You probably couldn't have picked any better towns. So
I
well
did my
done.
research.
Yeah, yeah. When you were at Coda, did you get to go up into the observation tower?
I did, and I actually went up there. Funny enough, I went up there. So I have some friends in the paddock, and there was one
Yeah.
of my friends that had another friend that had come over from I can't even remember where he came over from, but it was somewhere in Europe. And it was his
Mm.
mission to go up to the top floor. And he played the violin at the top of the
Okay.
floor, which was quite unique, I thought. So
Yeah.
we went up after the race and he played the violin. So it was, yeah, different.
More music. You can't get
More
away from it.
music, yeah, 100% more music, but yeah, very much different experience.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, Coda's, I mean, a beautiful place. It's very like kind of futuristic almost. I know it's
Mhm.
not that old, but to me it seemed like very sleek and very like new still. And you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um,
It's pretty cool.
yeah. So, well, it's been a fantastic conversation. I only have one more question for you.
Oh, okay.
What, after being in the industry for so long, being a race fan, being a motorcyclist,
Mm.
what keeps you coming back to, what fuels that passion for motorcycling? What makes it so special to you after all these years?
The adrenaline. It's just the adrenaline. I don't think that there's anything else. Like you said, there's a common belief that there's nothing like motorcycling, and so the people that you work with every day, especially in the halls of Ducati, um,
Mm,
there's just this absolute passion for what we do, and the adrenaline of racing, the adrenaline of riding, the adrenaline of seeing other people enjoy it as much as we enjoy it. That is essentially what keeps me coming back, I guess.
I love it. Well, Alana, thank you so much for taking some time. Enjoy the conversation, and hopefully, we'll see you at another race sometime soon. You never know.
You never know. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.